Welcome. In this video, we are going to discuss about turns, which is a type of the secondary structure of the protein. Then we are going to discuss about the supersecondary structure and then tertiary and quaternary structures of the protein. So let's start with turns. Now most proteins have compact globular shape, and this compact globular shapes requires reversals in the direction of polypeptide chains. Now many of these reversals in the direction of polypeptide chain are accomplished by a common structural elements known as turn. Okay, so turn is that structural element by which the reversal is achieved in the direction of the polypeptide chains, which is a requirement for compact globular proteins. Now these turns consist of 3 to 5 residues, 3 to 5 amino acid residues, and they are the third type of the secondary structure. Okay, so the first type and the second type is your alpha helix and the beta pleated sheet, and the third type of the secondary structure is turn. Now this short U-shaped secondary structure that we are talking about, these turns are stabilized by hydrogen bonds between their end residues. Okay, between their end residues there are hydrogen bonds, and that is what is stabilizing this short U-shaped secondary structure, which is known as turn. Now glycine and proline, these two amino acids are commonly present in a turn. Now there is lack of large side chain in case of glycine, and there is a presence of built-in bend in case of proline, and these allow the polypeptide backbone to fold in a tight U shape. Okay, so why? There is a reason why this glycine and proline are commonly present in the turn, because the glycine don't have a large side chain and there is a built-in bend in case of proline, and these two things make it possible for a particular polypeptide chain to fold into a tight U shape. Okay, so that is the reason why glycine and proline are so common in the turn. Now this turn allow the protein to fold into a highly compact structures. Okay, turns allow proteins to fold into highly compact structures. And there are some structure which are also known as loops. Now these loops are longer than turns, but they don't have the regular secondary structure. Okay, so there are also loops which are longer than turns, but they don't have regular secondary structure. Now these turns are classified into alpha turn, beta turn and gamma turn, and this separation is based on the fact that this classification is based on the separation between the two end residues participating in hydrogen bonding. Okay, the two end residues which are participating in hydrogen bonding, how they are separated. On the basis of that, these turns are classified into alpha turns, beta turns and gamma turns. Now in case of alpha turn, the donor residue and the acceptor residue are separated by 4 peptide bonds. That is, in case of alpha turn, 5 amino acids are involved. Okay, so the hydrogen bond is formed between the carbonyl oxygen of the residue N and hydrogen of the amide group of residue N plus 4. Okay, so consider residue N and 4 residue away there is residue N plus 4. Now the carbonyl oxygen of this residue and the hydrogen of the amide group of this residue, these two are hydrogen bonded, and that is how your alpha turn is getting formed. Now this beta turn, which is the most common form, is characterized by the hydrogen bonds in which the donor residue and the acceptor residue are separated by 3 peptide bonds. Okay, so hydrogen bond is between N and N+3 residue. Now in case of gamma turn, the hydrogen bonds is between the donor residue and acceptor residue, which are separated by 2 peptide bonds. That is, the hydrogen bond is between N and N+2 residue. Okay, so that is how the classification of this turn is done. You have alpha turn, in which the donor residue and acceptor residue are separated by 4 peptide bonds. Then you have beta turns, in which the donor residue and acceptor residue are separated by 3 peptide bonds. And you have gamma turn, in case of which the donor residue and the acceptor residue are separated by 2 peptide bonds. Now these turns are located on the protein surfaces, and that is the reason why these turns are involved in the participation or interaction between the protein and other molecules. Okay, when protein interact with other molecules, the turn is the structure which is interacting. Okay, it is participating in the interaction. Now let's look at the super secondary structures. Now many globular proteins contain combinations of alpha helix and beta pleated secondary structures. Okay, they have combination of both alpha helix as well as beta pleated sheets, and that is what your super secondary structure is all about. Now specific geometric arrangement of this alpha helices and beta strands connected by loops is known as super secondary structure, which is also known as motifs. Okay, what is super secondary structure? The specific geometric arrangements of the alpha helices and beta strands connected by loops. Okay, that is what your super secondary structure is, and it is also known as motifs. Now these secondary structures, these super secondary structures can be alpha alpha, beta beta, or beta alpha beta. Okay, in case of alpha alpha, 2 alpha helices are connected by loop. In case of beta beta, 2 beta strands are connected by a loop, and in case of beta alpha beta, 2 parallel beta strands are connected with the alpha helix. And there are more complex structures as well in these super secondary structures, which we call as Greek key motif and beta barrel. Okay, these two are more complex structures in the class of super secondary structures of proteins. Okay, so this structure is your Greek key motif, and this is known as beta meander, and this is your beta alpha beta. Okay, 2 beta sheets are connected by an alpha helix, and here there are 5 beta sheets and they are connected by loops, as you can see. So these are your super secondary structures. Now let's discuss about tertiary structures. Now this tertiary structures refers to unique 3-dimensional conformations that a globular protein assume because of the interactions between the side chains and the primary structure. Okay, the reason for this tertiary structure is the interaction between the side chain and the primary structure. Okay, so tertiary structure is an unique 3-dimensional conformation that a globular protein assumes because of the interactions between side chain and primary structure. Now all the information which is needed to fold the protein into its native tertiary structure is there in the primary structure of the peptide chain. Okay, the primary structure of the peptide chain contains all the information that is required to fold the protein into its native tertiary structure. So your primary structure, okay, that amino acid sequence will decide the tertiary structure. Covalent and non-covalent interaction stabilizes the tertiary structure. Okay, so the tertiary structure is stabilized by hydrophobic interactions, which is a major form of non-covalent interaction. Then it is stabilized by electrostatic interactions, which are also known as salt bridges, then hydrogen bonds, then van der Waals force of interaction, and at last covalent bonds. Okay, so these interactions, these bonds, these interactions are stabilizing the tertiary structure of the protein. Now let's discuss more about the covalent bond. Now the covalent bond which is present in the tertiary structure is the intrachain disulfide bond. Okay, intrachain disulfide bond which is present in your structure, tertiary structure, that is what this covalent bond of this tertiary structure is. Now this disulfide bond, which is also known as S-S bond, forms between two cysteine residues. Okay, these disulfide bonds form between two cysteine residue by the oxidation of their thiol group or sulfhydryl groups. Okay, so the disulfide bond in your protein, which is constituting the covalent bond present in the tertiary structure, is formed between two cysteine residues due to oxidation of thiol groups or sulfhydryl groups. Now this oxidized dimer form of this amino acid cysteine is known as cysteine. So cysteine is two cysteine amino acid connected by the disulfide bond. Okay, that dimer of two amino acid cysteines is known as cysteine. Now methionine is also containing sulfur, but this methionine cannot form the disulfide bond. Okay, only cysteine can. So this is your cysteine residue, this is your another cysteine residue, and this is the disulfide bond which we are talking about. Okay, this is what this is the covalent bond that is making your tertiary structure, that is contributing in the tertiary structure of the protein. And this is cysteine. Okay, this two amino acid residues are cysteine residues, and this whole thing which is getting formed is cysteine. The fundamental unit of the tertiary structure is known as domain. Okay, what is domain? The fundamental unit of the tertiary structure is domain. Okay, so the domain is a polypeptide chain, or it is a part of the polypeptide chain which can fold independently into a stable three-dimensional structure, stable three-dimensional tertiary structure. Okay, so domain is a polypeptide chain or the part of the polypeptide chain that can fold independently into a stable three-dimensional tertiary structure. Okay, so domain is the functional unit of a protein. Okay, domain, it means that the part of the polypeptide chain or the polypeptide chain that can fold independently into a stable three-dimensional tertiary structure, that thing is the functional unit of a particular protein. Now the thing is that the protein may contain a single domain or it can contain more than one domain. And if you are considering small proteins, okay, then small proteins have only one domain. Okay, small proteins have only one domain. So this is all about the tertiary structure of the protein. Now let's see the quaternary structure of a protein. Now many proteins like hemoglobins are made up of two or more polypeptide chains. So these kind of proteins which are made up of two or more polypeptide chains like hemoglobin are known as multimeric proteins. And each polypeptide chain of this multimeric protein is known as 2 subunit. Okay, so many the proteins which have two or more polypeptide chains are known as multimeric proteins, and the polypeptide chain which makes them is known as subunit. Now the subunit of this multimeric protein can be identical or it can be different. If the subunits are identical, then that is known as homomultimer. Okay, that particular protein is known as homomultimer. And if the subunits of that multimeric protein are different, then that protein is known as heteromultimer. Now the polypeptide subunits that assemble to form a quaternary structure, okay, those polypeptide subunits are held together by non-covalent interactions as well as covalent interactions. Okay, the polypeptide subunits that assemble to form the quaternary structure are held together by non-covalent interactions as well as covalent interactions. The non-covalent interactions which are involved in this are the hydrophobic interactions, then electrostatic interactions, and then covalent interactions. Hydrogen bonds. Okay, covalent interaction is the other type. So the non-covalent interaction which is involved here are the hydrophobic interactions, electrostatic interaction, and hydrogen bonds. And the covalent interactions which are involved in the quaternary structure are the interchain disulfide bonds. Now let's discuss about the determination of the molecular weight of proteins. Now average molecular weight of a standard amino acid is near 128. Now what is average molecular weight? Well, it is a dimensionless quantity which is the ratio of particles mass to the 1/12th mass of the carbon-12 atom. Okay, the ratio of these two things is your average molecular weight, and for the standard amino acids it is about 128, and the symbol of this average molecular weight is capital M. So when amino acids are involved in the formation of polypeptide, one water molecule is removable during peptide bond formation, right? When two amino acids are joined by peptide bond, then in that reaction one water molecule is removed. So the average molecular weight of the amino acid residue in a polypeptide is considered as 110, that is 128 minus 18. And why? This 18 is the molecular weight of the water. Okay, so if one asks you the average molecular weight of the amino acid, then you will the answer for that is 128. But the average molecular weight of the amino acid residue is 110. And the reason behind this is when there is formation of the polypeptide chain, okay, when there is formation of peptide bond between the amino acid residue, there is removal of one water molecule, and the average molecular weight of the water molecule is 18. That's why it's 110. Now this average molecular weight can also be expressed in terms of molecular mass, and this molecular mass is expressed in the units of Daltons. Okay, so that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.